Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We will now call the June 20th, 2025 Board Development Committee meeting to order. Mr. Wilburn, will you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Representing Educational District 2, we have Ms. Aretta Baldwin, and she's the chair of this committee.
And I'm present.
Representing Educational District 3, we have Dr. Ken Zeff. And representing Educational District at Large Seat 9, we have Ms. Jessica Johnson.
Present.
Also present via Zoom, we have our Madam General Counsel. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. I will now entertain a motion to approve the agenda for the June 20th, 2025 Board Development Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Board Member Zeff and seconded by Board Member Johnson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. We will now move. Yes, we're going to approve those minutes too. So I will now take a motion to approve the minutes from the March 27th Board Development meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded, moved by Board Member Johnson, seconded by Board Member Zeff. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. And now we will move to our discussion items. And please note that documents are located within our Assembly platform. And we will start with our financial protocols discussion. As you recall, we looked at a draft, and we have been working with legal and have an update to share with Board Development Committee. And I will turn it over to Jessica Johnson to walk us through what we have.
Okay, thank you so much, and I will be leaning on Nina to make sure I'm speaking appropriately on kind of the suggested revisions that have been made to the document. And so what we have before us is our board office financial policies and procedures, and what we're looking to do is really present a finalized draft before the full board, I believe, so that we can all just be aligned in agreement with the best policies and procedures to make sure that we're leading from the front in terms of our governing ourselves financially with the board office. So we presented this document at our last board development meeting and have since had an opportunity to review and make comments, ask questions, get clarity. And there's just a few areas here, Nina. I don't know if you want to just give high level the rationale behind your recommendations, and then I guess I would open up the floor if my colleagues had specific questions or comments regarding the document as a whole.
Sure thing. And I'll just go through some general thoughts at a very high level. First, it's not clear whether this is going to be a regulation, whether it's an internal procedure. But if you want to really memorialize it and have it live publicly, you can consider making it a regulation that lives in your policy manual as a board regulation. The second overarching thing is the budget and spending authorization. It does say that the expenditures have to be approved. I recommend that there be sort of an owner of expenditures. I'm a big fan of, and pardon the saying, but there being one throat to choke. That one person is in charge and ultimately accountable. And you do have an executive director of your board office who presumably should be in charge of making all of those expenditures of the board budget. And then the final really overarching thing is the spending thresholds. The spending thresholds in this document are quite a bit lower than in policy DJEA. So wanted to make clear that notwithstanding that other policy that would apply otherwise, that the board and the board office intends to hold itself to a lower spending threshold. And really the rest of any of those other revisions are sort of cascading off of that, if that makes sense. So that's really the overarching theme of my review and my suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll move to questions. I know I have some. I believe Board Member Zeff, Dr. Zeff has some as well. So we'll start with Dr. Zeff.
Appreciate it. And thank you, Nina, for, actually, thank you, Board Member Johnson, for firing up this process, and Nina for your input. And I think I love the phrases that we've added in the purpose that the board intends to lead by example, be model good stewards of public funds, and so that is, I think that's right, and I appreciate that naming the thing. That's why we're here, because we want to do that. To me, the question I have is really, you want to balance efficiency with transparency. And so it seems like we have a pretty high functioning procurement policy right now. It is DJEA. Or at least it seems like that we're satisfied with that process, or that policy and that processes that it lays out. Can you talk through why we want, I don't have a problem with lowering the thresholds for board office. My concern is I just don't want to get bogged down, because this body isn't well positioned to get into the weeds of reviewing line item budgets. And so if the policy, if there are, is the right control to have this group do it, or is there some other mechanism? Can it be the administration, or talk me through why the thinking behind lowering the threshold, and really my concern is that going to slow down the efficiency?
Yes, for Nina.
I can give a guess. I don't have a legal response, but I have an idea of why that might make sense. So my understanding is this is specifically for the board office. And the lowering of the threshold is our budget at, say, $1 million is different than the administrative budget and the things that they're doing. And so my understanding is the threshold is lower because what the board office is dealing with in general is lower amounts, right? So we're not looking, this is specific to the board and board management and not necessarily the district.
And if I could just add, I think what the intention is not for the approved budget. I think we have a process underway for our annual approved budget. And in my view, this is for items that are above and beyond that approved budget. So additional contracts that are above $10,000. I think the full board would need to be aware of those if they haven't already been previously approved in our annual budget.
I guess that some of those I guess just getting clear, that's helpful. That's helpful context. I read this: the Board of Education must approve all board-related purchases of $10,000 or more. I just want to make sure that doesn't get in the way of what you just described, Jessica, of, hey, we have this moment in time, we approve the budget, and as long as we're living in what we said we were going to do, great.
Correct.
But to me, if it's any time an item comes up, and maybe there's not that many. Again, I mean, I'm happy to go with it and then see. Like, I just don't want to, I know how hard and long it takes to get in front of the board to
Right.
approve an item.
Right.
And two or 3 months, and I just don't want to get in the way of routine purchases that we don't have a problem with, that we've approved in the budget. But if it costs more than $10,000, that's slowing us down. But if that's my only concern.
So then should we add some language to that bullet point to say be above any expenses above the annual approved budget?
That's what I was thinking.
That's what I understood the way you described it to me. But I'd love to hear from Nina, just because I know we're getting in the weeds a little bit.
Yeah.
I was actually I just raised my hand to ask a clarifying question. So, when you approve a budget, it's one big budget for the entire organization, and the board office is part of it. And, and I'm just making up numbers here. Let's just say that the board office budget is $1 million in total, but there are certain buckets within that $1 million, X number of dollars for board member travel, X number of dollars for supplies, X number of dollars for salaries. Board Member Johnson, are you suggesting that expenditures of over $10,000 beyond that overarching $1 million budget be approved, or expenditures over $10,000 within that designated bucket be approved? So let's say you had $200,000 set aside for supplies, and and the board office had already spent that, and they needed more supplies. Even though they had money left over in the overall budget, is it the intention that additional supply purchase would have to come to the board for approval?
Sure. And so let me ask a clarifying question. Is there a process in place now for reallocating funds across budget line items or categories?
There should be. I think Mr. Wilburn will probably have more insight into managing the board office budget, but I do believe that you can reallocate X to Y, so long as you're saying budget neutral overall.
Sure. I think it would be those respective categories. And so if we say we're going to spend $25,000 in communications and then we hire an outside consulting firm that's another $50,000, then the board should be aware of that and know that we are outside of what we already approved and really kind of follow a set process going forward for that expenditure.
Okay, perfect. That gives me really good direction in revising this.
I'm
to-
aligned. I'm aligned with that.
Yeah, I think that that's good clarification. That if at a moment in time we said we were going to have $25,000 for staff hiring, that was a process, and then I think you're right. This budget creep of like, oh, we're going to deprive some other budget and shift it over. I think we should know about that and we should be aware of that. But if you live within that budget that you laid out, I don't want to slow up a hiring process.
Sure.
Because we already agreed to it, but we need to see it again. Right. So I guess so I think the way Jessica outlined it makes sense to me.
And I'm not sure, Nina, how the wording needs to be changed to make sure that we're capturing that sentiment.
Well, and please don't ask me to speak extemporaneously. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm a little bit foggy, but I will wordsmith this to make it match the intention.
Thank you.
Ken, did you have any additional questions?
I think having reviewed, I think that was, what was the other comment? I guess just my last question is, are we, otherwise we're going through the district procurement. We're not, none of this is meant to go around the district procurement function and district policy, right? If anything, we're adding additional layers of protection to that, but nothing is going outside of what's common. And Nina, maybe you can check this up. I guess it would be my intention. I would feel most comfortable living in the district procurement policy, and if we felt like we needed to add a few more higher bar, but that nothing would go around the traditional district procurement policy. Is that?
That's how I'm envisioning this as well, is that your standard operating procedure is, everything, the same procedures that the rest of the district uses. But if you're going above the budgeted for a specific function, that's when these lower spending thresholds kick in.
And so my question is kind of along those lines as well, really clarifying just to understand that this is really basically like a compilation of existing policies and procedures that we're putting in one place for ease for board, and that as opposed to a bunch of brand new things. I just wanted to, that is my understanding, that this is basically a compilation to keep us aligned and on track. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there is one brand new thing with the lower spending thresholds and the board approval required for any expenditures beyond a dedicated budget function.
Which we've
That
just
is a new
discussed,
thing.
right?
But beyond that, no, it should be standard operating procedure. So if everyone stays within their budget, this will never become relevant.
Excellent. Okay, and then I guess my next question is, you kind of addressed it in terms of when we get this to a place, like how do we codify this? Like, what does this look like? Does it go to policy? Does it go in front of the full board? What do next steps look like? Because I do also know, not on the agenda, but the next agenda we'll be talking about the board governance manual, and you already mentioned that this more than likely would live in there. So could you talk a little bit about what do next steps look like, and what is our role as the board development team in pushing that forward?
So my recommendation is that this live as a board regulation in your policy manual. That gives it maximum transparency and visibility, and something immediately to point to, and it gives it sort of the force of law, for lack of a better term, which means it does need to go through policy, then to the full board for approval.
And would it go independently, or would it go packaged with our revised board governance manual recommendation?
It can go independently.
Okay. So we don't have to wait until that whole manual is complete to get this locked in. Excellent.
That's right.
Jessica, did you have questions, comments?
Just two questions. I know there's an X still by the maximum travel budget per member. Do we know what that current number is so we can include that in the document?
There is a current number. There is a number that exists. Whether or not it is honored is, there is a number that exists. And as we finalize the board allocations, that number will exist. I do have, I like that. I want to honor that. And there was an exception in that space that we might want to address. I'm not sure where we address it. So the exception was if you are a representative of a particular organization, then that doesn't necessarily count towards your travel. I suggest that if that stay the case, that we be a little bit more equitable in how we assign who's representing who, so those dollars don't fall on one place or in one person's responsibility. And so that could be, but I don't know if that is ours in terms of our space to allocate, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Ken, I see thoughts.
I'm not necessarily in favor of that kind of carve out. I mean, I think we should look at every. There's nothing unless it's mandated by law, and I don't think there's any of those. So if we're a member of X organizations, Urban Schools of America or something, and they say, oh, if you're going to be a member, then you should come to this conference. I think we still need to look at that with the same eye that we're looking at other travel, because unless, so I don't think because I think every trade organization is going to tell you, you got to come to our thing, because our thing is where, but unless it has the force of law, and I don't think there's anything that has the force of law that says you have to go to even GSBA. I mean, there's districts that don't send anybody to GSBA. So I think we look at it, we look at everything, we line them up together and say, we may do this, but not, I don't think you get fast tracked.
That sounds like alignment. I
So
was just
I just
aligning
want
it
to
in a
point out-
different way, but that is in a different, that does live in a different policy.
Yeah, I do want to point out that your board policy BBBC has that carve out for travel. So if that's something that this board development committee would like to pursue through a policy change, that's certainly something you can do.
I definitely think that it needs to be looked at just in terms of just the equity of education, travel, and development. I see a couple nods. I think that's consensus.
I agree. And so I think the number was $3,000, but
It was in the threes. It might have been like 36 or 32, but it was in the threes.
And just for sake of ease, in this purchasing regulation, I guess we'll just go ahead and call it, instead of putting a number certain, we can just put in language around like the board approved travel budget for each board member. So you don't have to update it every year with
Okay.
a new number.
okay.
That sounds good.
That sounds great. And then I did have one final question around kind of the removal of, on the first page around contract reviews and supporting invoices. And so I do think, again, for items that are above and beyond what the board has already approved, there should be some, I don't know what's in place now to account for additional revisions beyond our initial conversations for consultant work that's completed.
So I don't have great visibility into that either. As everything goes through the board office. I can tell you the typical administrative procurement process is it goes through the procurement division, legal reviews, and approves every single contract that gets entered into on behalf of the administration. We can set up something similar, or we can add in language if it's going to be a board approved item. It's coming on. It'll be on a board agenda, we can require that the supporting contract be part of that agenda item that comes before the board for your review and approval.
Okay, I'd like to add that if possible. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Well, Nina, we look forward to looking at how this document comes to life, and then we would then recommend it to, my understanding is to the policy committee?
Yes, that's correct.
And will we need to see it again before we make that recommendation, or can we?
I
Can we-
can send around a revised version, and if there is consensus, we can just move it on to the policy committee.
That sounds amazing. Way to move things forward, board development. Let's
Doing my best.
go. All right. So I believe that we are done with that agenda item, and we can move on to the next item, which is training hours. And I am so pleased to see the movement that we have had in our training hours, and we are now just a short 2.5 hours away from being in total compliance, and not just total compliance, but blowing it away. So great job, Atlanta Board of Education, on your training. And we know we're going to get those 2.5 hours because we've already had GSBA, and those hours haven't showed up yet. So prematurely, I'm going to say, congratulations, team. We did it. All right. Any questions, comments, or concerns on our training card? Thank you, Michael and Nina, for helping us race to the finish line. We truly appreciate it. And Tamesia, girl, we see you in the back. We appreciate you. If nobody told you today, I'm going to tell you, we love and appreciate you. Ah, thank you. Moving on to board travel. The travel report is in front of you. And for review, questions, comments, concerns. This is through June 30th, so it would include GSBA.
So we prematurely asked them to put GSB on here, but this GSB would have been included in the May Board Development Committee, but we asked them to include it for this meeting so that you all will have it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Great job, guys. Great job. Madam General Counsel. Oh, any questions on board travel? Madam General Counsel, is there a reason for us to retreat into executive session?
Yes, Madam Chair, you need to discuss a personnel matter.
Is there a motion to enter into an executive session to discuss personnel matters?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Board Member Johnson and seconded by Board Member Zeff. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. We'll see y'all when we get back. Madam General Counsel, is there a report out from executive session?
Madam Chair, not from legal.
Thank you. Let's see, Mr. Wilborn, do we have any public comment? Do we have any stakeholders who signed up for public comment?
No.
What? You said they lined up out the door?
Public comment.
Y'all missing out. I tell y'all, these are the best meetings. So, with that being said, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved by Board Member Johnson, seconded by Board Member Zeff. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. It's a wrap.